In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land, and a man from Bethlehem in Judah, together with his wife and 2 sons, went to live for a while in the country of Moab. The man's name was Elimelech, and his wife's name was Naomi, and the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem, Judah, and they went to Moab and lived there. Now Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. They married Moabite women, one named Orpah and the other Ruth. After they had lived there about 10 years, both Mahlon and Chilion also died, and Naomi was left without her 2 sons and her husband. When she heard in Moab that the Lord had come to the aid of his people by providing food for them, Naomi and her daughters-in-law prepared to return home from there. With her 2 daughters-in-law, she left the place where she had been living and set out on the road that would take them back to the land of Judah. Then Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's home. May the Lord show kindness to you as you have shown to your dead and to me. May the Lord grant that each of you will find rest in the home of another husband." Then she kissed them, and they wept aloud, and said to her, "We will go back with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? Am I going to have any more sons who could become your husbands? Return home, my daughters. I am too old to have another husband. Even if I thought there was still hope for me, even if I had a husband tonight and then gave birth to sons, would you wait until they grew up? Would you remain unmarried for them? No, my daughters. It is more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord's hand has gone out against me." At this, they wept again. Then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. "Look," said Naomi, "your sister-in-law is going back to her people and her gods. Go back with her." But Ruth replied, "Don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if anything but death separates you and me." When Naomi realised that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped urging her. So the 2 women went on until they came to Bethlehem. When they arrived in Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them, and the women exclaimed, "Can this be Naomi?" "Don't call me Naomi," she told them. "Call me Mara, because the Lord Almighty has made my life very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi? The Lord has afflicted me. The Almighty has brought misfortune upon me." So Naomi returned from Moab, accompanied by Ruth the Moabitess, her daughter-in-law, arriving in Bethlehem as the barley harvest was beginning.
We come to the book of Ruth, and I hope that you've taken the time, just a few minutes that it takes, to read through this book during the week. I hope you've been encouraged by it. I hope that you've been able to see what the Lord is doing through Ruth, through Naomi, through Boaz, and the way that the book culminates in this magnificent way. But some key questions that we should ask about the book. What's the timing of this book? Where does it fit? And chapter 1, verse 1 tells us where it belongs. In the days when the judges ruled, in the days when the judges judged. And if you look the page back, you'll see the book of Judges there. And so the story of Ruth belongs somewhere in the pages of the book of Judges. I'm pleased that it stands alone as a separate story because it is a story without villains. And Judges is not a story without villains. The place of this book, you will find it in our Bibles between Judges and 1 Samuel. And it's great that it's there, but it hasn't always lived there. There was a time when in Jewish culture where it would be at the end of Proverbs. And so in Proverbs, in chapter 31, you would read of the wife of noble character. And then you would turn the page and read the book of Ruth, where you would be introduced to a wife of noble character. But I'm glad that it's placed between Judges and 1 Samuel. It's a beautiful oasis in the heartache from Judges to the heartache of Hannah at the start of Samuel, and then some of the heartache that goes on there. Which also leads to what is the purpose of this book? And there are various answers to that, but I think one of the purposes of this book is revealed to us at the end of chapter 4. And if you flick over to the end of chapter 4, you'll see in the last few verses there a short genealogy which ends with David, who will become the king of Israel. And David, of course, is the great king of Israel. And 1 Samuel chapter 16, we see David being anointed to be the king of Israel. And here we learn about where he's come from. It's confronting that we learn that David has a great-grandmother who is a foreigner, a Moabite no less, but that's important for us. One Christopher Ash has said, as we read the story, we should never forget that it took place in the days of the Judges. The book foreshadows the day when the moral chaos and darkness of the days of Judges and our own age will end, and there really will be a king after God's own heart, Jesus, who is called Messiah. And David, the great king, is the great king of Israel, but Jesus is King David's greater son. And so as you read the book of Ruth, you should be looking for what are the hints here that point me to Jesus, the things, the names, the people, the circumstances that help me here. What is the key to the book of Ruth? I think the key to the book of Ruth is our verse of the week, which will be our verse of the month. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Here's a statement from a woman that is making a great declaration. I am leaving my people to be with your people. I am leaving my gods to be with your God. I am leaving what is false for what is true. So today, we're going to talk about the people of Israel. Not the people of Israel, the people of the book of Ruth. Who are the people of Israel? But the people of the book of Ruth. Next week, we'll talk about the promise, and then the providence, and then the prayers of this little book. But today, the people. And your outline that you have as you received as you came in will reveal to you there the story of the three, the story of the five, and the story of the one. And the story of three is because there are three main characters in this book. You can probably work out who they are if you've read it. One of them is the title character, and one of them is Naomi. And if I pronounce the names differently, I've been listening to some marvellous female Jewish scholars during the week, or for the last few weeks, and their pronunciation is different to anything I've ever heard before. So that might come out. So Naomi, or Naomi, she is described. We learn that she is a wife, and that she is a mother, and that she is an Israelite. She belongs to the people of God, the people of Judah, the clan. She's one of the Ephrathites. But circumstances have meant that she has moved from her home in Bethlehem or around Bethlehem to Moab. There's a lot to say about Moab, and in the Bible, pretty much none of it's good. None of it's good. Moab is a place of people who the Israelites fight against. Moab is a place where the people mock the living God. And yet, this is the place that Naomi and her family are taken are taken to. We know that it's a famine that's driven them there. We know that Moab is a place where food is plentiful, and so it seems, in one sense, a logical place to go. But her life there, we learn, is not without extreme misery. It is not without extreme heartache. She is bereaved of a husband, which means that she is now a single parent. And it means that she's the single parent of 2 sons. Now, I have a huge respect for single parents. I don't understand why people would choose to have children if you're single, but for parents who become single and continue to raise their children with all the extra burden of trying to do that on your own, particularly with 2 sons, I'm aware of the burden that can create. And here is one who is in that position. She has 2 sons. What will she do? And then they die. And Naomi is left. And her hope for a normal future is gone, and it's replaced by a natural fear for what the future will hold. For in her time, life is difficult for a woman, even more difficult for a widow, even more difficult for a woman who has no sons. We don't understand that. In our time, there are organisations, there are homes, there are places who will provide care and help widows and bereaved and so on. But not so much in that time if you didn't have your family around you. Particularly because Naomi is in a foreign land now and without a protector. Her life has turned completely upside down and inside out. The future is unknown, but is looking bleak. So when she does come back to Bethlehem and people say, "Oh, is this Naomi?" She says, "Don't call me Naomi anymore. Call me Mara, bitter. For the Lord I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. I went away full of promise and hope and potential, and I've come back empty." How can she recover? How can she recover from this life circumstance? What will happen for her in Judah now that she's returned to her original people? Well, we'll come to that, but as we continue to read through about Naomi, we find that she is faithful to God. She must be faithful to God because her daughters-in-law say to her, "We will come with you to your people." And Ruth says, "Your God will be my God." I can only conclude that Naomi, probably with her sons, but certainly Naomi, has been a faithful witness to the living God in a foreign land to her daughters-in-law. And she has revealed to them the goodness of God in such a way that they are able to see beyond what they've grown up with, beyond the history that they have, beyond the god Chemosh, beyond that kind of worship, to a living God who doesn't need idols, to a living God who answers prayer, and to a living God who has made great covenant promises. And so they want to come with her. She's a woman of great confidence. She has confidence in Boaz, her friend, her part of Elimelech's family. When she says to her daughter Ruth, or when Ruth comes back to say, "I've been in Boaz's field," it's good for you to go there. You will be safe there. She has confidence in him. And then when she sends Ruth to Boaz in the middle of the night, and here's about the story when Ruth comes back, she says, "The man will not rest until the matter is settled today." There's a great confidence in her, in Boaz. And Naomi has confidence in Boaz for a good reason. First, he is their guardian redeemer, their kinsman redeemer, their family redeemer. But second, he has shown himself to be kind and faithful. Hold on to that thought about Boaz. He is a guardian redeemer, and he has shown himself to be kind and faithful. Naomi is also proactive and bold. If you turn your Bibles to Ruth chapter 3, you'll see there, and if you've read it, I'm hoping that this may just sit up a bit and say, she did what? Because here in the start of chapter 3, Ruth is told by her mother-in-law to do something which is ridiculous and puts Ruth in great danger. Boaz, the time of harvest is coming to an end. And Naomi, my daughter, I must find a home for you, some rest for you, where you'll be well provided for. Boaz, where you've been working, will be resting. So wash, put on perfume, dress in your best clothes. Why would she do that? The best answer that I've heard I've heard a few answers about that one, but I think the best one is to show that she is no longer a widow in mourning. She's no longer dressed in mourning clothes. She's now dressed to say, I'm ready. Go down to the threshing floor. Don't let him know you're there until he's finished eating and drinking. Note the place where he's lying. Go and uncover his feet and lie down. He will tell you what to do. Parents, particularly those with daughters, don't do this. Do not tell your daughters to do this. Do not instruct your daughters to do this. Ruth is placed in enormous danger. She goes in the dark. There's no street lights. She goes in the dark to this place where a man has been drinking. He's in good spirits after he's been drinking, and she lays at his feet. Who knows what would happen to her? Who knows what could happen to her? It's something recorded in the Bible, but we shouldn't treat it as a biblical command. There are wiser ways to encourage your daughters to meet good men. But she is proactive and she is bold in that. Naomi's story is not finished. And in fact, by the time we get to chapter 4, it's hard to tell, is the story actually about Ruth or is it about Naomi? Is it about Ruth moving from empty to full, or is it about Naomi moving from empty to full, or is it both? Let's come to Ruth. Ruth is a Moabite. She's referred to through this book as Ruth the Moabite. She describes herself as a foreigner, and she is, but she has changed. And so she says to Ruth says to Naomi, sorry, I'm getting these names confused, don't urge me to leave you. Don't urge me to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. We read from Hebrews chapter 11 earlier, where we had this lovely definition of faith. Faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance in what we do not see. And for Ruth, as she's taking this step away from her homeland, away from her parents, she's doing so with great faith. Her family alliance has moved from her parents to her husband, Machlon, and now to Ruth. And now to Naomi. Her religious alliance has moved from Chemosh, the god of the Moabites, to Yahweh, the living God, the God of Israel. And that can still happen today. That can absolutely still happen today. No matter your background, no matter what you are welcome in Jesus. If you're an agnostic, you can change to become a Christian. If you're a Buddhist, you can change to become a Christian. If you're a Hindu, if you're a Muslim, if you're an atheist, if you're just a bogan Australian, you can change to become a Christian and a follower of Jesus. You are welcome there as Ruth is welcomed by the living God. Ruth, like Naomi, is proactive, but she is humbly proactive. And as they come to back into Bethlehem, we learn that the time for the harvest is just beginning, and it is Ruth who says to Naomi, I'm going to go and glean, picking up the wheat in the field. Now, if you do that today, you'll probably get arrested for trespassing, and there wouldn't be much left because machinery is much more efficient than it used to be when it was all done by hand. But it was actually a law of God that the harvesters in their harvesting would need to, they would go through the paddock, they would pick the wheat, they would put it into sheaves, into bundles, and whatever was left behind, they weren't to go back and pick up. They weren't to go to the very edges of their field. That was to be left for the poor. Isn't it a beautiful thing that God's commands leave something for the poor, that they can come and earn their food? That they can come and earn what they are given? Ruth, in her humility, comes and begins to do that. It happens that she's in the field of Boaz. And that becomes a key aspect to the story, of course. In Ruth chapter 3, Boaz describes her as a woman of noble character. In fact, he says all the people of the town know that she is a woman of noble character. She's shown all the qualities of a noble woman. But listen to this. She has shown all the qualities that a man like Boaz might be looking for in a wife. She's proactive, she's hardworking, and she's a woman converted to his faith. So women, if you aren't married and you're open to the idea, are you showing by what you do that you would be a worthy wife? Don't depend on your looks or your income. What is it about your character that is revealing that? Men, I'll come to you in a minute. Boaz is the other character, the story of 3. Chapter 2, verse 1, you look there, he's described as a man of standing, a prominent man of noble character, a worthy man. And the King James Version calls him a mighty man of wealth, and the rest of the book reveals that is the case. We see that he is protective, and he is beautifully protective of Ruth. The first time he meets her, as she is gleaning in his fields, he says to her, stay here with the women, with my servant girls. You'll be safe here. I've told the men not to lay a hand on you. And I read that and I think, you have to tell them that? You have to tell them not to lay a hand on you? But then I remind myself that this is the book of Judges. And if you read the last 5 chapters of the book of Judges, you'll understand exactly why Boaz needs to say that to these men. For that was a time when there was no king and everybody did what was right in their own eyes. And it was the women who suffered the most. She is generous, or he is generous. Boaz is generous. He invites Ruth over to share lunch with the crew, and he hands her some roasted grain. And then said to the others, let her gather pull some wheat out and leave it there for her, so that she can, and whatever she picks up, don't rebuke her. He fits his reputation. And by all that he is doing, in his kindness, in his generosity, in his business, in his relationship with the men that he works with, and the women that he works with, he is showing that he is good husband material. So to the men, to those who aren't married and are open to the idea, are you showing that you would be a worthy husband by what you do, what you are? And again, I'd say to you, don't depend on your looks or your income. Anne fell in love with me when I had no income, and I've never looked much good. So, but it's worked out well. Boaz is a man of integrity, and we see that particularly in the way he treats Ruth when he wakes up in the middle of the night. Now, I've learned that if your feet are warm, it's easier to sleep well. So if you have trouble getting to sleep, put socks on. It might make a difference. My experience is it does. So, if someone was to uncover my feet in the middle of the night At some point, I would absolutely wake up. And Naomi has instructed Ruth to do this, and she's done that. And so Boaz wakes up, and at his feet is a beautiful woman. No one else is there. He is a man of strength and authority. She has nothing. She is a foreigner. If he was to take advantage of her sexually, she would have nothing to stand on. But their reputation for both of them was at risk here. And what does he do? He says, stay here. Why does he say that? Because that's where she is safest. To head back home in the dead of night is to put her in grave danger. And while she does leave early before the sun is bright, that is to protect her and his reputation. Again, I would say this is not a good model for people to follow today. The honesty of his position in being a kinsman redeemer is beautiful, but he knows he is not the first. There is another one who is closest, and he needs to be involved in this first. He could just take advantage of it, but he can't because someone else needs to do that. There's another redeemer. And then his public declaration. I said earlier that Naomi had good reason to have confidence in Boaz. He's the guardian redeemer, and he has shown his kindness. And now in the middle of chapter 4, or chapter 3, and then into chapter 4, we see that confidence to be proven right. And so it is with our Redeemer, Jesus Christ. He is our only Redeemer. He has shown his kindness, and we can be confident in him. The story of Ruth is the story of God and his people. And so as we read it, we should be reading it in that context. The story of God and his people, including us. I want to very quickly talk about the story of 5, these lesser characters. There's the family of Naomi, Elimelech, who's the husband. His name means my God is king, or it might mean kingship will come. The question of was his death a punishment because he took his family away from the promised land into Moab? The Bible doesn't tell us that. There's Jewish commentary that tells us that is the reason, but the text itself doesn't say that. And so I want to be careful about saying that's true. The Bible's not afraid to point out when God does put people to death because of their actions. You'll see that in Genesis 38. You also see that in Acts chapter 5, Ananias and Sapphira, and the difficulty of that passage. But that's not the case here. He just dies. Same with Mahlon and Chilion. They just die, these sons, and we don't know. And then they leave the story. Orpah is the other daughter-in-law. Again, she's not a villain, but she's not a hero. What she's chosen is the sensible path, the logical path to go back home. And then there's the other redeemer. Jewish writers call him Ploni Almoni. Just drop that into a conversation with anyone if you want to. Ploni Almoni. He's the other redeemer who does not take on Ruth. But that's not a bad thing. There's nothing wicked in what he's done there. There are reasons for that which are kind of hinted at but not made clear. The heartache of these people is what could have been. What could have been. Particularly for Orpah and the other redeemer. Orpah perhaps more than anyone else. What if they had done what they didn't do? It reminds me of the story of the rich young ruler who walked away from Jesus. But ultimately it's the story of one. And I need to do this quickly. The story of Ruth is the story of God and his people. But the story of Ruth is the story of God acting, Yahweh. If you know the book of Esther, you'll know that God is not mentioned at all in the book of Esther. Intriguing that that's the case. But he's not mentioned all that much here. God is silent in this book. His name is invoked. He is called upon. The Lord bless you. The Lord bless you. But God himself is silent. But he is not inactive or idle. We see in Ruth chapter 1 that the famine in Bethlehem is broken because the Lord has provided food for his people. We see in chapter 4, and this is the only place where God is seen to be the active part in the whole book, that Boaz took Ruth and she became his wife, and when he made love to her, the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. And maybe that helps to answer why she'd been married for 10 years to Mahlon but didn't have any children. But that's not all that God is doing here. There are things that happen in the book. As it turned out, Naomi or Ruth went to the field of Boaz. Just then, Boaz turns up. Just then, the other kinsman redeemer wanders by and the council begins. As it turned out, God is at work here. And you'll hear more about that when we come to the aspect of providence, God's providence revealed through this book. But I want to ask you, are you looking for where God is working? It might not be obvious, but it's there. Are you looking for where God is working in your life? Are you looking for God is working where you are? Where you are. It might be that God has placed you where you are right now for a purpose you cannot yet see. It might be that God has placed you with the people you're with right now for a particular purpose for one of those people. Can you see it? Are you looking for it? Where God might be leading you. It's often easier to see when you're looking back that a door opened that you weren't expecting. The Lord just happened to bring a conversation up that you were able to take part in. My friends, the story of the book of Ruth is a beautiful story. And as it unfolds, we're met with characters that inspire us or maybe frustrate us. We're met with people who look just like us, make decisions that we might make too. Elimelech made a sensible decision. There's no food here. There's food over there. We'll go over there. Orpah made a sensible decision. I could leave my family and everything that's here. Actually, I'm going to stay here. But we recognise that who the heroes are of the story and those who aren't. And we can learn a lot. We can learn about kindness. That's a key word through the book. We can learn about integrity from Boaz. We can also learn how people have failed in their responsibilities or missed out on the possibilities that were laid before them. And maybe we need to trust God more than we do. Maybe we need to take the path of faith and not the sensible, safe path. But the story of Ruth is not a moral tale. It's a story written and recorded for us to remind us that God is, and that God is in control of all things. The story of Ruth is the story of God and his people. We'll see that ultimately in the last few verses as we see the genealogy of David, who will be Israel's greatest king. And in the book of Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew, as we read the genealogy of Jesus, we recognize that Ruth the Moabitess is not only part of the family tree of King David, but also part of the family tree of Jesus. Ruth could not redeem herself. She needed someone to do that for her. And Boaz takes that role. We cannot redeem ourselves either. We need someone to do that for us. And Jesus fulfills that role. Our Redeemer is Jesus. Not in the way that Boaz was. In something far greater, far more significant, far more reaching. If you are a Christian, then the love story in Ruth is your story. Saved. Your people have become God's people. God's people have become your people. Now next week, we'll see how the promise that's hiding within the book of Ruth points to our greatest Redeemer.